Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day-to-day, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the murder of Frankie Fitzgerald. Frankie Fitzgerald was murdered by his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Shaye Groves. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. Alright, now that I'm done begging you to join my cult, we can go ahead and get into this video. This video is on a case that is relatively recent. At the time that I'm filming this, Shaye Groves just went to trial, was found guilty, and sentenced for the murder of Frankie Fitzgerald. Now, I came upon this case because, as I mentioned before, I follow a specific page on Instagram called Mug Shouties, where basically it's a page that posts mugshots of females who have committed various crimes, and Shaye's mugshot came upon my eyes. I saw it and I was like, huh, I'm sure you can tell because I'm going to have it up on the screen why she stuck out to me a little bit. So I was like, okay, I want to know what's up. What's her deal? So I went, I found her name, I searched the case, and I was like, holy, like it was crazy. What she did is just so horrible. And on top of that, it stuck out to me because Shaye Groves was an enormous true crime fan. Not somebody who's interested in true crime like most of us watching are, but somebody who was obsessed with serial killers to the point that she had many art prints on her wall of notorious serial killers, like hung up as art, okay? And I was like, huh, this makes me want to know everything about this case, and now I know all the stuff. I have too much in my head, so now I need to you know, share it with you. I read all the things so that you do not have to, and now I'm going to tell you all about it today. And once we get through this entire case, I'm going to ask you a question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it rocking around in your brain while we go through all the details of this case. But I want you to wait to answer it until you have all the information. But my question is this. What do you think really happened here? Do you think that Shaye Groves really did kill Frankie in like the heat of the moment, a crime of passion? Or do you believe this is something she wanted to do for a while and now just finally acted on it? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below after I go through this entire case. Alright, now with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the murder of Frankie Fitzgerald at the hands of his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Shaye Groves. Alright, where do we even begin? I guess let's start at July 17th, 2022. On that day, police respond to a call that led them to a home on Botley Drive, and this was in Lee Park, which is a large suburb of Havant or Havant in Hampshire, which is in the UK. It's a little after 8 a.m. and police knock on the door, and the door is answered by a girl who's in a robe, like a pink robe. She's got her hair all pulled up in a bun. She's smoking a cigarette. She's talking on the phone. She's clearly just woke up. And she's apologizing for her barking dog. This is Shaye Groves, and this is a home that Shaye shared with her roommate and like very close friend, a girl named Lauren White. So police are like, hey, we're here because we got word that someone got their throat slit. Like they were not holding back, they were not playing around, and it's at this moment that you can tell Shaye knows that she's screwed. Police enter the house and they start moving through the home, and as they do so, they notice that there's a crazy strong smell of bleach, and they would soon find out why. As they made their way upstairs, they found that Shaye had murdered her 25-year-old boyfriend, Frankie Fitzgerald, by stabbing him several times while he slept in her bed, and the smell of bleach was from her trying to clean up the crime scene. It's at this point that Shaye's like, yes, okay, I did take a life, but it was done in self-defense. And I was going to call you guys already. I was going to call you myself, but I just wasn't sure what to do here. I was kind of freaking out. She then tells police that she and her boyfriend had gotten into a little bit of a fight after she had found some things on his phone that she wasn't very, you know, happy to have found. The two fought and he started to strangle her. That was her explanation for why she did what she did. But the math really wasn't math in there for police. They didn't really believe her. And if they had sort of believed her, what they learned in the 911 call when they were called in the first place would have completely, you know, swayed them in the direction of, I don't fucking think so, lady. And she was told that morning that she was going to be arrested for murder. And it seemed right away that she had accepted her fate. Now, what happened here? Now, this is normally the part of the video where I would tell you all about Frankie, who he was as a person and who he was to those who love him. But unfortunately, the information's just not out there. I don't know if it's just because the case is too new, but in all of the reports that I read, I really couldn't find a lot of information about who he was as a person. I will tell you what I was able to find, but it wasn't as much as I would like. And you know, if you've been here before, I don't love that because I feel like these people, Frankie specifically right now, needs to be remembered for more than just how he died, because he was more than that as a person, and much more than that to everybody who knew and loved him. But I will tell you what I do know now. I know that Frankie was one of 5 children. He was the baby of the family, and he was born to parents Barry and Roseanne. I know that he was the absolute light of his family's lives, and that they're totally heartbroken without him. It's like the light in their lives has forever been dimmed. And I know that he was also a father himself. He'd been in a relationship with a woman named Charlene, and the two had 2 beautiful children together. I believe it was a daughter that was followed by a son. And I know that she, Charlene, is totally heartbroken and says that she has a really hard time trying to imagine a positive future. Knowing that one day her kids are going to have questions that they should never have to ask, and she's going to have to somehow come up with the answers to those questions, and she's not prepared to have to do that. And she said that Frankie's just one of those people who had no idea just how loved he was. And even though there isn't a ton of information on him out there yet, this does seem to ring true that he was the type of person who wouldn't even know how loved he was. He was described as an amazingly kind and beautiful person with this smile, this like grin that was unbelievable. And he was the type of person that you couldn't even really argue with because he would just instinctually make you laugh. He was said to be the type of person who would do anything for anyone, and he was the type of person who couldn't even hurt a fly. And now he was dead, and his murderer, Shaye, was saying that he was the opposite of all of those things. Now, like with Frankie, there isn't a ton of information on Shaye out there either. I tried to find what I could. I was able to find both of their social media pages and kind of take some information from there, but there really isn't a ton out there. I was able to find out that Shaye, who went by Shaye Gross, but also went by Shaye Lauren Corrigan. I'm not sure why she has 2 names out there. Like when this was initially reported on, she was referred to as Shaye Corrigan, but when she was arrested and in court, she went by Shaye Gross. But anyway, Shaye was an interesting person to say the least. At least trying to learn about her was, because she seems to have gone through like a pretty drastic change in the last several years, at least physically. When I went on her Facebook, her photos sort of start tame, average, if you will. Her all girly in her dresses and all that. But by the end, she's in the corsets and the banties and has all the face tattoos. And I was like, wow, okay, that's quite a change pretty quickly. But anyways, Shaye was either 26 or 27 when she murdered Frankie. I saw it reported as both. And she was actually a mother herself. She was the mother of 1 girl. She has a daughter named, I believe it's Arisa, or Arisa, A-R-I-S-A, who looks by photos to be maybe around kindergarten age. I'm very bad at that. And man, when I think of that, when I think about the fact that her doing this will make it so she never has the opportunity to watch her daughter grow up, and made it so that Frankie never has the opportunity to watch his kids grow up, it's just so selfish and so stupid, man. I don't know how somebody could do something like that. It's just, I could never, you know. But then again, I could never be in the mindset of somebody who does something like this, because I wouldn't do something like this. But anyways, Shaye had been in a relationship with a guy named Ashley, and the 2 of them went on to have Arisa together. I know that they separated. They were no longer together at the time that this crime occurred, and from his social media, it appears that he's moved on. He has, you know, a new woman, a new little family, and I just hope at this point that his daughter is with him, since, you know, she doesn't have a mother anymore because of her stupid actions. Now, as I said, Shaye seems to have changed quite a bit in the last several years. I know she was drinking, selling weed, and she had admitted herself to trying drugs and saying that she and Frankie would occasionally do coke together, which is true. And she did seem to have some mental health issues stemming from some abuse she experienced when she was younger. She was diagnosed with depression and PTSD and said that she often had flashbacks and had trouble sleeping, but that she didn't become violent to others. She would just engage in self-harm. But in addition to that, she just had some like darker interests. She was really into horror movies, which like, same, right? She was into him so much that she even gave her nickname Lauren the nickname Chucky from, you know, Chucky the doll. So because of this interest, she had, you know, horror memorabilia up on the wall. She had knives and Viking axes up on the wall. And she was the type of person that liked to carry a combat blade on her at all times. She had books about Bronson, which if you don't know who that is, he is just known as being the most violent prisoner in Britain. And she was very into true crime. She watched all the shows, all the documentaries, and she even had several prints up on her wall of notorious murderers like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Rose West, and Myra Hindley. And man, when I was researching this case, something that was just like ridiculous to me is, because you know, people will write about things they don't know anything about, like, because you're just a reporter. And there was this photo of her where she was like posing in front of her wall of, it was like a mirror photo, and you could see all the photos in the background. And it was like Shaye Groves was famous murderer Ted Bundy, and the killer in the background was actually Jeffrey Dahmer. And I was like, cool. But anyways, that's what's going on with her. So now let's talk about them as a duo, as a couple. Shaye and Frankie had met at a bar or a pub. And this was in January of 2022. And this pub was also in Hampshire. The two seemed to hit it off really fast, really well. They got along, they were into each other, they found each other attractive, and they started to date. But the relationship seemed to be kind of struggling from the start. It seemed to be rocky right from the very beginning, and they broke up all the time. Even though they had only been together 6 months of the time that Frankie was killed, the whole relation had been on again, off again, on again, off again, which honestly to me sounds so exhausting. Exhausting or no, though, that is the relationship that they had. They both just seemed to be, from the outside looking in and from the things that I read, to be lonely people who were looking for some connection, and the two of them bonded because they had some very specific, dark, adjacent interests, specifically some sexual interests that the two of them were equally yoked in, right? Okay. They were into BDSM, you know, bondage, dominance, submission, and masochism. And they were both into knife play when it came to getting down, generally using a dagger that Shaye had for her, quote, rituals that strengthened spiritual connections. So they would use her dagger, they would do the stuff, they'd have the fun. That's what they were into. And that to me is totally fine. If that's what you're into and you're both adults and you're both like down with that sickness, then go for it. Have fun. But it seemed like Shaye's interest in pain extended outside of the bedroom, and she often thought about and talked about hurting Frankie. When the two would break up, Shaye would consistently complain to her friends about the breakup and say that she wanted to hurt Frankie. Even recently, even right before he was killed in June of 2022, the two broke up. Shaye and Frankie broke up for a bit after, I guess, they got into an argument because Frankie called Shaye by an ex-girlfriend's name. You know, whatever, who cares? But Shaye was so pissed that she texted her friends and was like, you know what? I want to stab him right now. So that's them as a couple. So now let's talk about what happened that day. So it turns out that morning, the morning that Frankie was found killed, Shaye had sent a text to a friend of hers named Vicky. I think this friend was Shaye's best friend just based on what she tells her here, and also like the extent of involvement Vicky seemed to have in Shaye and Frankie's relationship, which we'll get into later. But either way, Shaye texts Vicky and is like, me and Frankie got into a big fight. He left, he stormed out, and I think our relationship's finally officially over. Now, I don't know if Vicky responded to this text. I saw that it came in at like 5 o'clock in the morning, so there's a good chance that she was sleeping, but I know the text came into her phone. Now, after a little while, at about 7:45 in the morning, Shaye went on to call Vicky. She actually went on to video chat her, and the two just started having a conversation, which seems wild to me that two friends would be video chatting at 7:45 in the morning. If my friend ever video chatted me at 7:45 in the morning, I would assume something was terribly wrong. But Vicky said Shaye was fine. They were just chatting. She was giggling. She was in good spirits. They just talked about each other's weekend, and she said she had no idea that anything bad had happened at all. But soon into the conversation, the vibe would change quite a bit. I guess while on video chat, Shaye went upstairs, and before she showed Vicky what she was going to show her, she said, hey, I want to show you something. I did something kind of big, but you have to promise not to tell anyone. And then she straight up showed her friend Frankie's dead body, saying, quote, I've done him. Vicky said at first she thought this was a joke because Shaye had a weird and a dark sense of humor, but that she quickly realized that it wasn't a joke just by the condition of Frankie. He was laying down with like a duvet cover wrapped around him, and he was on top of a bunch of trash bags. And what really gave it away is that twice Shaye like showed very closely, like put her phone very close to show Vicky a giant gash in Frankie's throat. And during this call, Shaye went up and down the stairs and went 3 different times back to the room to show Vicky what she had done. And Vicky said of this, and I quote, I don't think I had really grasped what happened earlier. The gash was so deep. It was enormous. I watch crime scenes, but this is too real. there was a massive gash in his neck. Now, obviously, upon seeing this, Vicky was like, what the fuck, bro? Why did you do that? And Shaye goes on to give her explanation, which is very frustrating, but she was super calm when she said that the night before, her and Frankie had gotten into a little bit of a fight over one of her exes, and that they went to bed angry. And that after he was asleep, she had went through his phone. And in going through his phone, she had found some messages from him to a female, a 13-year-old girl. She says at this point she totally lost it and she reached over to her bedside table where she grabbed a dagger, because apparently she just keeps a dagger on her bedside table, and she proceeded to stab Frankie. She said of this quote, "I was straight away angry, upset, and confused. It tipped me over the edge." So she's telling Vicky all this, and all the while she's walking around her room and she's cleaning up blood. She's like going over to, she has this coffin-shaped bookshelf, and she's cleaning the blood off of the book. She's pulling a book out, showing it to Vicky, being like, oh, look at how far this blood splattered, cleaning it up and putting it away. Now this story shocked Vicky. She just couldn't understand it or believe it. She said that maybe this whole situation would have made sense to her if like Frankie had been attacking her, because Shaye had been telling her friends that Frankie had been abusive to her, but that's something that we'll get into later. But she straight up told Vicky Frankie was asleep, at least for the first stab where she stabbed him in the neck. The first stab was to the neck, and she said he was asleep. She did say that after that he like, this is kind of graphic, that when she stabbed him in the neck, he woke up and tried to fight back and like, you know, jerked his head, but the knife was like still in there, and it like made the gash that much bigger from him like, you know, moving, and that blood went everywhere. Now, I don't know if Shaye told Vicky all of the specifics here, because it wasn't just the wound to Frankie's neck. Don't get me wrong, that wound to his neck was horrific and likely would have killed him, but that wasn't the only injury to his body. 25-year-old Frankie Fitzgerald had been stabbed 22 times. He was stabbed 17 times in the front of his chest, twice in other areas of the chest, and 3 times in the neck. There were, quote, multiple perforations to his heart and his lungs and catastrophic blood loss. She had literally severed Frankie's left internal jugular vein. So Vicky stays on the phone with her and kind of asks her, like, okay, like, what do you plan to do with his body? Like, what are you going to say at this point? Like, you got to stay on the phone to get as much information as you can, but you also are like, do I want any of this information? But she does. She asks what Shaye plans to do with the body. And Shaye tells her that she plans to just take him out and bury him in her garden of her home, which I think a garden in the UK is just like the yard. But she's like, oh, I just plan to bury him in my yard, my garden. And then I'm hoping that everybody will just believe that he like left on his own because he was super depressed and then just went off and killed himself, because apparently he had been super suicidal recently. So she thought that that was a really plausible explanation for his absence, which is just really, really fucked up, to be honest. All of this is fucked up, but that's just something about that. I was like, what a bitch, you know? Now this whole idea that he just like left on his own and was suicidal and went off to like kill himself was actually something that Shaye had already started trying to like paint the way for when she texted Vicky that morning. She told Vicky the reason she texted her saying that, you know, her and Frankie had gotten in a fight and he had left and she thought the relationship was over is because she wanted to, quote, cover her ass and make like an electronic alibi for herself as to why he had disappeared. So that is a lot of thought, right? And then her friend Vicky's like, you know, you're probably gonna get caught, man. Like, I don't know how you think you're gonna get away with this. And Shaye was just like, don't worry about it. I'll be all right. Now, Shaye went on from here to try to, you know, make her friend not think that she was like an evil piece of shit woman, that she, you know, because it was definitely looking like that's what she was. And she was like, no, this was justified. This was justified because Frankie was very abusive to me. And she went on to send Vicky 3 video clips where it appeared that Frankie was raping her. Now, I want to just say right off the bat that we're going to get much farther into this, the rape allegation. And also, I know I just kind of skirted across the like 13-year-old girl part of the story, but just keep in mind, this is all coming from the killer's point of view right now. And we're going to get into all of that later, like during the trial. And I just want you to know now, so I don't get any shitty comments about like, because people like to blame victims, and just wait, just hold, just don't say anything mean because you don't know what's going on yet. Now, this would be like a super traumatic phone call for Vicky, right? Like, I can't even imagine having that phone call with your best friend And it's a video chat, right? So she's got to like keep her face in check. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning. Like there's a lot going on. But I feel like Shaye must have kind of got the vibe that Vicky was not catching what she was throwing, you know? She wasn't picking up what Shaye was putting down. She felt like this was not great. Like I feel like she knew that maybe her friend wasn't on board with her. Because before they got off the phone, Shaye looked at Vicky and was just like, we're still friends, aren't we? So Shaye and Vicky get off the phone, and Vicky, being a good person, immediately calls the police on Shaye. They show up at her house. They find Frankie's body, the trash bags, the bleach. They find a BB gun in her room, and they found the dagger that she used to kill him in the bathroom sink. From there, they arrest her, but they don't only arrest Shaye, actually. They arrest her 26-year-old roommate and mother of one, Lauren White. And now I know I didn't mention Lauren much yet, but we're going to get into her now. So Lauren was home at the time that this happened. I don't know if she was there the night before, but she was definitely there the morning of. And while Shaye and Vicky were on the phone together, Vicky heard Shaye and Lauren speaking to each other. And Lauren telling Shaye, like, I can't do this. I'm going to crack. And Shaye being like, you better not crack. You better keep it together because you are an accomplice to this. You put those trash bags under his body. So Shaye was arrested and charged with murder, while Lauren was also arrested, but she was charged with, quote, failing to comply with a Section 49 notice to disclose the key to protected information. So from what I understand, what that means is that she was arrested because during their investigation, they needed to get into her phone, like the PIN number for her phone. And she was like, nah, dog, you're not getting in my phone. And this was very frustrating and unhelpful to the investigation. So she got arrested for that. And they were also investigating her in connection with Frankie's murder as well. Now, despite the two women being arrested, police did seem to be keeping an open mind when it came to this case, and they were wanting to investigate the murder further than just like the scope of inside the home. They even reached out to the public, asking anyone who may have been driving in that area the morning Frankie's body was found to come forward so police could determine if there was anything suspicious or to review their like dash cam footage. They also wanted to look at Ring doorbell or CCTV footage that other people may have had. And I don't know exactly what they were looking for, but they were being vigilant regardless. They even went as far as bringing in like search dogs, like sniff dogs, bloodhounds, police dogs. They brought in police dogs to search the property more thoroughly in case there was something that they may have missed. And they came out and made a statement to the public saying, and I quote, "We would like to reassure the local community that we are working hard to establish exactly what happened and that we do not believe there to be any wider risk to the public." So it's kind of like we're looking, but like we kind of know what happened. That's the vibe I got. So police knew who murdered Frankie, and now they had the horrible task of informing his family. Some officer specialists, people who specialize in that area, met with the family as well to try to help them through the information that they were now receiving. And once it came out who had killed Frankie, his family released a statement saying, and I quote, "Frankie was a loving father, brother, and son. He was the light of our lives, and we will miss his kindness, his happy smile, and the fun person that he was." Frankie had a large amount of friends and family, and this news has left us all devastated. After Frankie was killed, dozens of his friends and his family got together to honor Frankie and to just kind of remember him for who he was to them. And during this gathering, which was put together by his sister Carla, people released balloons into the sky that carried photos of Frankie. And this gathering was actually the first time his sister Carla had spoken out publicly since Frankie had been killed. And she said that her family was just completely lost, completely devastated. And she said specifically, and I quote, "His death has just broken our whole family, but it has brought us closer together. We are so close as a family. We were so close as a family anyway, but losing Frankie has broken our hearts. No one ever thinks something like this is going to happen. He would not hurt a fly. This is why it's so tragic. He wasn't a horrible person. He didn't deserve to die like this. He was my baby brother. He was special. He was always there for me. He was always so funny. He had the biggest grin. He was just amazing. I didn't know anyone who didn't like him. He was so loved." One of his friends also spoke on his behalf. This was a guy named Michael who had known Frankie since he was 13 years old. And he said of Frankie, quote, "He was a diamond. He had a heart of gold. No matter what was going on, he would always be there for you. His mom loved him so much. He was her whole world. He was special. He was one of a kind. He then went on to talk about his experience in learning that Frankie had been killed. He said that Frankie's sister Carla had called him, and as soon as he heard the news, he just broke down. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that something like this could happen to somebody you cared so much about, and definitely not somebody like Frankie. Not somebody that everybody loved, not somebody that was always grinning and making people happy, just not Frankie. Anyways, the girls were taken into the station and Shaye refused to talk. And when they went to court, like their first hearing, they both like refused to say anything. They just stated their names and that was it. I did see that the charges against Lauren were eventually dropped. Like they stopped looking at her in connection with the murder. And Shaye even admitted to police that she had nothing to do with it. And I saw that the charges for like the phone pin, the pin to her phone, were dropped as well. So I don't know what's really going on with that. It seems like nothing's going to happen to her. I don't know if anything should. I don't know enough about it. The only thing I saw about her was that on the phone, Shaye said that Lauren had put the bags under his body. So I don't know, but that's what's going on right now. I just cannot imagine what it would be like to be her, especially if she had nothing to do with it at all. To have your best friend, because I guess her and Shaye were, well, I guess Vicky was Shaye's best friend. I don't know, you know, girls can have multiple best friends. They were said to not just be roommates, but to be very close friends. So to have your very close friend do something like this and you to get arrested right alongside her, especially if she had nothing to do with it, like, wow. But then if she did have something to do with it, if she helped like clean up the scene, that is something, right? I don't know. Anyway, Shaye's arrested and she's charged with Frankie's murder. And as often happens in cases like this, her story, once she was like in trouble, you know, in jail, mounting her defense, her story started to change a little bit. So she tells police something different than she had told Vicky over the phone. What she told them was similar enough, right? There were some similarities, but there were some big differences that made her look a little less guilty, right? So she tells police that yes, she and Frankie had been hanging out together the night before he was killed. They'd been drinking, they'd been doing coke, they'd been having fun. She said they got in a little bit of a fight, went to bed angry. All the same things she told Vicky. But this is where it sort of changes a little bit. This is the departure. She said that she had gone through his phone and she had seen those messages, the messages with the 13-year-old girl. And she said that she got very upset, very angry. She got tipped over the edge, but she didn't kill him. She woke him up. She was like, hey, wake up. She called him a pedo. She called him a nonce. She was like, I am going to take the videos of you raping me and I'm going to post them on Facebook to sort of punish you for you talking to this other girl. This is what she tells police, which is already like, that's fucked up. But I mean, not as fucked up as killing him, so whatever. But that's what she's saying. She said in response to this, her threatening to like post the videos of him raping her online, that he went into a rage and that she could tell that something was off. There was something in his eyes. She knew he was going to hurt her. She says that he grabbed her by the throat. He slammed her into the headboard and he started choking her until her vision went blurry and she couldn't breathe at all. She said of this quote, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even scream. I realized he wasn't going to let go and I feared for my life. She said that she then reached for an object off of her bookshelf. She was hoping to grab a money box so that she could just use it to hit him, to get him off of her, to get him to stop choking her. So she reached over, but instead of grabbing the money box, she grabbed a dagger, which I'm sure those feel exactly the same. But anyways, she grabs the dagger and she hits him in the throat with the dagger, not realizing that's what it was. She says at this point he rolled off of her and he stood up against the wall and that he slowly slid down the wall. She said eventually he was totally still and that the only thing moving was the blood that was bubbling out of his neck. And she said of her next moves, quote, his chest wasn't moving. It was just the noise. When that happened, I realized that I had killed him. I tried to stop the bubbling. I put my hand there, but that didn't do anything. So I stabbed him in the heart. She said she stabbed him twice when he was on the floor. She said she just lost control for a second, for a couple of seconds longer than she expected to, and that everything just happened faster than you would think. Now, I don't know if this part's true. I didn't see if this actually happened, but what she said happened next is in a panic state, she actually called her ex. Remember her daughter's father, Ashley? She said she called Ashley. She told him what she had done because she needed to know what to do next. And she says that he told her that she needed to wrap the body in plastic and clean up all of the blood. So she did just that. She started, cleaning up. And she said that this is when she enlisted her friend Lauren, her roommate Lauren, to help her. And that Lauren helped her put his body on trash bags and like shopping bags. And that Lauren put a pillow over his face. She said that morning as she went through the scene and started cleaning up, what she had really done started to hit her, and she realized how serious it was, and that she had plans to take her own life at that point, but police got there too soon. Now, it didn't take long for Shaye's trial to begin. I feel like when we're talking about cases in the US, sometimes we're like, it's been years, it's been decades, and things still haven't happened. But in this case, things happened really quick because the murder happened in July of 2022, and by February of 2023, she was already done. Like, by this month that you're watching this, or next month, it'll be March by the time I get this up, the case is done. She has been sentenced. But anyways, the trial starts. Shaye says she's not guilty. She pleads not guilty and says that the murder was done in self-defense. Now, the prosecution disagreed. They were presenting a case of a woman who had killed her boyfriend because she was obsessed, particularly obsessed with his performance in the bedroom, which is a weird thing, but it's literally in every article you read about this. Like, that was the thing they were saying that the motive was about. I don't know. The prosecution believed that she had killed him because she was incredibly jealous and possessive, and she had gone through his phone and she had saw that he was talking to another woman, and that she made him pay for that. So now, let's first talk about the defense. Now, you remember Shaye had initially told Vicky that she had stabbed Frankie to death while he was asleep. Well, that definitely did not look good and didn't support her defense of self-defense. So she had to change that at trial. And she goes on, like, her defense attorney questions her and is like, so, you lied to your friend. That's weird. Why'd you do that? And she explained that yes, she had lied to Vicky, that she lied to Vicky when she first told her that Frankie was asleep when she had attacked him, and that the story of him attacking her and then her stabbing him was the truth. And when asked, like, why would you do something like that? That doesn't make sense. She says there were a couple of reasons why she lied. First, she didn't want to ruin Frankie's reputation, which, okay, gross. You were being very gross. But she also said that she didn't want Vicky to know that Frankie had attacked her because she didn't want Vicky to kind of be like, I told you so. She didn't want Vicky to be right. Basically, Shaye had claimed that Frankie had been physically abusive to her, not just on the night of the murder, but throughout their entire relationship. To illustrate this, many texts were read in trial that had come from Frankie to Shaye, where he said things like she was his and only his, and where he would tell her that he would paralyze her or hang her if he ever caught her cheating. There were also messages shown in group chats with Shaye's friends where she would tell them how he was abusive and would take things too far. And then her friends would respond, either worried for her or sometimes they'd joke that Frankie would end up killing her and that his photo would end up on the wall with all of her other beloved serial killers because he'd go too far with the sex stuff. Now, that's not good, but Vicky did testify at trial, and Vicky said that she believed that Frankie, based on her observations of their relationship, that she believed Frankie was only really rough or went too far with Shaye when they were in the bedroom, but that this was something that she believed the two agreed to and that Shaye liked. Now, I guess the reason that Shaye's friends thought that Frankie would go too far from time to time is because she would tell them that. She would say that he would do things that she didn't like and that he once throttled her so hard that she couldn't scream and she couldn't breathe. And this was illustrated in trial by the defense when they showed some footage because Shaye recorded, she had cameras in her room and she would record them having sex. And in one of the videos, it appeared that he was raping her. And even after the video was over, he said something along the lines of, that was a bit rapey, wasn't it? And Shaye was questioned after this was shown. And she's like, listen, I think he said that because he knew exactly what he had just done. He had just finished anally raping me. They also showed footage of Frankie and Shaye where he was holding her and spanking her and she was just screaming. So it doesn't look good. But here's the thing. We don't know the context of these videos. We don't know what was really happening, right? Nothing in Frankie's past, nothing anyone has said about him, nothing that's come out so far would show that he is that type of person. Are people different behind closed doors? Of course they are. But there is reason to think that it's possible that that's not what was happening here, even that it's likely that that's not what was happening here, and that Shaye is a liar. First, there's the testimony of her best friend, Vicky. And Vicky just had all the things to say, by the way. She did not hold back. She told the court that the cameras were installed in the room specifically to record Shaye with her partners, and that Shaye had a habit of taking consensual sex BDSM style consensual sex. She'd record this and then she'd hold it over her boyfriend's heads and her ex-boyfriend's heads to get them to do what she wanted. She said that Shaye had done this before with another boyfriend. She had threatened to show this old boyfriend's new girlfriend this footage unless he did what she wanted, and what she wanted was just for him to like drive her around town for the day because she had places to go. So she would threaten these guys for really trivial shit. So is it really that hard to believe that she would do this with Frankie as well and make these tapes that would make him look bad as well to hold over his head? How many times am I going to say as well? Hopefully that's the last time, especially since their relationship had been really rocky lately. They'd been breaking up. He had called her another girl's name. And Vicky said that Shaye's behavior had gotten more and more erratic since she started using cocaine more often. Vicky also said that Frankie had found out about these cameras and he had asked her to take them down. He was like, I don't want them up there anymore. And that's because Shaye, for a while now, had been threatening Frankie with videotapes of the two having consensual acts where she had made it look like they were not consensual, and she was threatening to release them on Facebook to make his life hell. And apparently she would do this every time the two broke up. Vicky straight up said of this, quote, she compiles evidence against everyone to see how she can use them as leverage. So there's that. But there's more evidence, okay? There's also the sex contract. Now, this is a letter that Shaye had written to Frankie, and the letter essentially said, quote, I, Shaye Groves, give Frankie Fitzgerald permission to arouse me through sexual intercourse from the date March 22nd until further notice. Which is like, fine. If that's what you guys are into, fine. Do whatever you want. But now she's saying that's not the case. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit sticky. But this letter was signed, sealed, delivered. It was hers. It was signed by Shaye. It was signed by Frankie. It was even signed by Vicky as a witness. Now, you may be hearing all of that and think to yourself, two things can be true at once. She can be a lying, manipulative, crazy girl, and he can still be an abusive guy who raped her. And you're absolutely right. Two things can be true at the same time. But remember those video clips, the video clips that Shaye sent to Vicky to show Vicky that, you know, Frankie had been abusive to her and Frankie had raped her, and this is why she flipped out and did what she did. Well, it turns out those videos were edited. She had taken video clips from a consensual sexual encounter because police found the full video and they found that it was consensual. They even had a safe word. The safe word was red light. And she had taken these clips and she had edited them to make it look like Frankie had assaulted her when he didn't. That's so messed up. They literally had their like safe phrase, red light, to stop. And it's just, that's the kind of manipulator she is. Somebody who would take something like that, where that kind of relationship is fine if your guys are on the same page, right? And that makes me so fucking mad, to be honest. But that's who she was. And that's the person that we're dealing with, and that's the person that we're supposed to try to believe here now. Her friend even said that she believed that Shaye would get hot over the edited clips because she thrived and loved the idea of violence. And this friend, I think it was Vicky. Yeah, it was Vicky. Vicky said that despite all this, Shaye was madly in love with Frankie. But she also said that she believed that Frankie was the one who was abused in that relationship. She went on to tell the court how Shaye had a violent temper and that on at least 2 occasions, Shaye had been very aggressive with her roommate, Lauren. You remember Lauren, the one that got arrested that she was good friends with. Apparently, Shaye had lashed out violently at her twice. And on one of the occasions, she like cut her with a pair of nail clippers. And she only stopped attacking Lauren when she saw the blood and realized that she had gone too far. In addition to that, there were other reasons to think that Shaye could have been hurting Frankie or planning to do so because, again, text messages and CCTV footage were played that showed her literally talking about hurting him and making plans to do so. In one of these videos, she talked about how she wanted to orchestrate an attack on Frankie. She wanted to ask one of her ex-boyfriends or one of her cousins to meet her and Frankie in a dark alley and to attack him. Okay, and to either hurt him or kill him. And she said that she would have them, like, I don't know, kick her in the leg or something so it would seem like it wasn't orchestrated and so that she could get away with murder. She was asked in trial about this, asked if she was serious about wanting to do this to Frankie, and she said no. And even Vicky said that at the time when Shaye said this, she believed that Shaye was joking. But the prosecutor was like, listen, this right here gives you a great insight into her mind. She is the type of person who would arrange or take part in having somebody hurt or killed and then pretend to be the victim, just like she's doing right now. The court also heard discussions between Shaye and her friends where she told her friends that she wanted to hurt Frankie because of how bad he had been treating her, saying that if he came near her, she wouldn't be able to stop herself. She would attack him with whatever was near her at the time, and she said, like, my dagger's right here. She was also asked about a fight the two had had just days before he was killed, where she had told her friends that she would like to put a knife to Frankie at that time. And she said that it wasn't true, that she didn't want to really hurt him, that it was all talk, that what she really wanted to do was, quote, stab him in the back, for lack of a better phrase. She said she wasn't the type of person to get violent or to actually hurt someone, that she was much more prone to just hurting herself. She just said she wasn't the type to get violent, and that she had snapped before in her life, but it wasn't a common thing for her. Now, the prosecution really painted a picture of an evil woman who snapped and killed her boyfriend over jealousy when she found those messages in his phone from that 13-year-old girl. And that after she killed him, she did a ton of work trying to hide what she did in creating an electronic alibi. They believed that even though she snapped, this was something that she had wanted to do for a while. And they illustrated this by talking about that back alley scenario that Shaye had discussed with her friends. The prosecution also showed that Shaye had a total lack of emotion and remorse for what she did. Because even though she was telling the court that she was devastated and traumatized and planning to take her own life, the prosecution was like, really? If that's so, then how come that morning, after murdering your boyfriend, you were on the phone with another guy, being all lovey-dovey? Because apparently that's what happened. Shaye had actually had another boyfriend. Apparently she liked to date the two guys at the same time as a, quote, balancing act. And she was the type of girl who would even try to, like, get them to be in the same place at the same time because she thought the idea of her getting caught in this situation would be hot. Which I've known people like that who do things like that, and it's very weird. But whatever. She's dating this other guy, she's talking to him on the phone, and Frankie is literally dead, murdered upstairs in her bedroom. Well, she's having a normal, sweet, lovey-dovey conversation and even inviting this guy over. That just didn't sound like the actions of a hurt and traumatized woman who was remorseful for what she had done. And it definitely didn't sound like a woman who was forced to murder this guy in self-defense. And the prosecution said of this to the jury, quote, if the killing was in self-defense, why go about setting such an elaborate false alibi for yourself? Why didn't she call the police immediately? Why did she clean up the crime scene? Why did she move the body? It was a cunning ploy. Nothing was affecting her mind at that time. The prosecution was basically like, look, she wanted to kill him. She talked about killing him. She made plans about hurting him and killing him. And then she killed him. She set it up to make it look like he was an abusive partner. She murdered him, and then she acted like the victim only because her friend called the police and turned her in. She wasn't going to turn herself in. She had plans to bury him in her garden and make it look like he ran off and killed himself. She was going to leave his family with no answers after she did what she did. She was obsessed with true crime. She read all about crime and murder. She watched shows about crime and murder. She was familiar with crime scenes and knew how to set up a false narrative. A narrative she thought would be believable and one people would emphasize and sympathize with her for. The fact that her boyfriend was an abusive man and she did what she had to do. And she knew how to clean up this crime scene because of all of the... What? My mouth. And that she knew how to clean up a crime scene because of all the shows that she watched, and she knew how to set up an alibi. The prosecutor ended saying, quote, where would the defendant have got the insight from to plan the details of the attack and to make it look like she was the victim of an assault? So the prosecution's implying that her love of true crime and her interest in true crime helped her plan and orchestrate the murder, and the steps she took afterwards were things that she had learned. And she was even asked, like, did you learn the tricks of the trade through your crime books? Which is like a little condescending, but like, I don't care because she sucks. And she was like, listen, I know that no alibi is airtight, and I know that no murder is perfect. The closest you can get is by injecting somebody with air. Which I was like, you could have not said that. That doesn't make you look good, but okay. Now, she did try to counter all this, saying like, yeah, she had an interest in serial killers, and she had an interest in horror, and she had a dark sense of humor, but all of these things, all of the things she found funny, the jokes that she told, the things that she would say, even the art on her wall and the way that she looked was more for shock value than anything else. Which, might I say, is a stupid fucking reason to get your face tattooed like that. If it really is just for shock value, maybe we don't. Maybe we get things just because we like them. Maybe we like things to like them and not for other people's reactions, but you know, whatever. So after about a month of trial, the jury was sent to deliberate, and after just about 18 hours, they came back with a verdict. They had found Shaye Gross guilty of the murder of Frankie Fitzgerald, and she was scheduled to be sentenced on February 22nd, 2023. The judge thanked the jury, and Shaye, who was wearing like a jean jacket with a pentagram on the back, smiled as she learned that she was found guilty. And then she was, you know, lifted and led out of the Winchester Crown Courtroom, and this was the same courtroom that had once held one of her idols, Rose West. After the verdict was read, the senior investigating officer on this case said, and I quote, "Our thoughts first and foremost are with the family of Frankie Fitzgerald. I would like to praise their courage and hope that today's verdict brings them some small relief, despite knowing that nothing can fill the void left in their family by the loss of Frankie. I hope that the sentence Gross receives in due course provides them with reassurance that justice has been secured for Frankie. We will do everything we can to investigate and bring justice to those responsible for such horrific crimes. The details disclosed in court were distressing for all to hear." Speaking of his family, after the verdict was read, his family released a statement saying, and I quote, "As a parent, you never expect to outlive your children. You will do anything in your power to protect them. Frankie was our baby, the youngest of 5 children. He can never be replaced. He was a kind and beautiful person and sadly leaves 2 children behind that will never get to know their daddy. We thank the jury for their verdict today. To our Frankie, we love you and miss you more than anything in this world. Your shining light will always be in our hearts." Now, her sentencing took place on February 22nd, 2023, so about 2 weeks ago when you're watching this, yesterday when I'm filming this. The judge told Shaye that she was a manipulative, possessive, and jealous woman, adding that though she and Frankie had a relationship with a dangerous dynamic that was marked by, quote, "rough sex, cocaine, and alcohol," end quote, that is not why she did what she did. The judge said to Shaye, quote, "You lost your temper and acted upon impulse. You loved the man you killed and killed the man you love." The judge then told her, like, listen, I don't think you're a cold-blooded killer. I think you acted on passion. You killed him because you were so upset that he was talking to a 13-year-old girl. But you didn't even bother to look at the fact that as soon as she said she was 13, he blocked her. And she wasn't even a 13-year-old girl. She was 17. The judge then sentenced Shaye Gross to life in prison, and she would have to serve a minimum of 23 years before she would be eligible for release. And when her sentence was read, she was completely motionless. The judge then said of Frankie's death's impact on his family, quote, "You have robbed Frankie's family and loved ones of their son and brother and his 2 young children of their father. You ended his life while he was still in his mid-20s. You have not only taken his life, you have blighted those of his mother, father, siblings, and children for decades to come. Until last week, you showed little concern for their suffering, present and future. Your interest was in yourself, not others." Frankie's father, Barry, did come out and make a statement saying that his family is broken. He said that Frankie was young and at like the beginning of his life had everything ahead of him when it was just snatched away from him. And he said that he is still grieving and he doesn't know if he'll ever get through this. He then added, quote, "Today I would say to Frankie, I love you, son. You are missed by everyone." So now that we're coming to the end of the story, I want to tell you guys that Frankie's family actually does have a GoFundMe page, which we are in a unique situation here where this is a newer case. Because you know, I don't do a lot of like current cases, but we are in a unique situation where this just happened. So we are able to help the family monetarily instead of just, you know, keeping them in our thoughts, keeping them in our prayers. So if you are able to, please go ahead and donate to his family. If you're not, just go ahead and make sure that Frankie's case is known and out there so that others can do so. You can share this video, you can share any articles on this page. I'm gonna have the GoFundMe link down below. You can just share that. And if I forget to link it, please tell me, because I always forget to put links in my description box because I post it like, you know, 4 or 5 in the morning. So if I don't put it, please tell me so I can put it right away, because I want to make sure that this family gets all the help they can get, because this is, you know, like I And now for one last quote, I want to tell you what the GoFundMe page says in part. Like, I don't think this is the entire GoFundMe page, but I feel like it gave a little insight into Frankie, and it also gave some insight into what the family is going through and what they want to accomplish with this. So the GoFundMe page says, and I quote, "Frankie was a much-loved son, brother, uncle, father, and friend to a family that, as you can imagine, are completely heartbroken. This GoFundMe is set up to help ease the financial strain of funeral costs, so the family can grieve in some kind of peace at this time without adding more stress and worry or trying to find funding for a funeral, which was not expected. We are asking communities far and wide to come together at this time by helping support them, any kind of donations, whatever is affordable to help. This lovely family never deserved this amount of pain that had been inflicted on their innocent Frankie's life and have stolen him from them forever. Let's give Frankie the send-off he deserves." And with that quote, that, my friends, is the story of the murder of 25-year-old Frankie Fitzgerald. I hope you found this case to be interesting and informative, and I hope I gave you all the information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I just want to thank you for remembering Frankie with me today. And now that I've given you all the information, I want to revisit the question of the day, and that was this. Do you believe that Shaye killed Frankie in the heat of the moment in an act of passion? Or do you believe this is something she wanted to do for a while and she just finally acted on it? Please let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. But anyways, guys, before you go, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with any cases you would like to see me cover in the future. As you know, I have a long list of cases, and anytime you leave a suggestion, I put it on the list with your name next to it so I can give you a shout out if I cover it. I love looking into the cases you guys are interested in, the ones you recommend, because you often recommend cases to me that I've never heard of or that just need more coverage, and I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste, otherwise you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership where you can get early access to non-sponsored videos, occasional live streams, things like that. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.